People think debt is just numbers, bills, letters, phone calls you don't answer. But debt can have footsteps. Debt can have voices. And sometimes debt knocks on your door at 1 o'clock in the morning. I was 16 when my mother died. By then the hospital had already taken almost everything from us. Machines that breathed for her. Medicines with names I couldn't pronounce. Doctors who spoke kindly while sliding new papers across the table. My father signed all of them. When she passed, the papers didn't stop. They grew. After the funeral, the house changed. It didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a waiting room. My dad was old before his time. 62. Hands shaking from years of factory work. I was always doing math he didn't want me to see. He told me once, even if I work every day, no rest 1 year and 6 months. Maybe more. I remember pretending not to hear. At 16, you believe time is endless. You believe problems are storms that pass. I didn't know storms could have faces. That weekend, Dad traveled to see Grandma. She lived 2 towns away. He said he needed advice. I think he just needed to breathe somewhere that didn't smell like hospital disinfectant and unpaid bills. I stayed home alone. The house was silent, except for the refrigerator and the old pipes that knocked like someone trapped inside the walls. I locked every door. I checked them twice. At 12:57 a.m., I was still awake, scrolling through nothing, pretending to be normal. At 1:03 a.m., someone knocked. Not a friendly knock. Not the knock of a neighbor. 3 heavy hits. Then 2 more. My heart jumped into my throat. I went to the window beside the door and lifted the curtain 1 inch. 5 men and 1 woman. The porch light showed their faces too clearly. One had a scar that pulled his mouth sideways. Another wore a jacket too big for the heat. The woman held a phone, smiling like she was waiting for a friend. They didn't look like police. They didn't look like delivery people. They looked like trouble that had learned patience. Another knock. Louder. I didn't breathe. They called my father's name. Not mine. His. Mr. Edwards, we know you're home. My knees went weak. How did they know us? How did they know the house? Debt collectors, my mind whispered. But these weren't men who sent letters. These were men who collected differently. I stayed still. Didn't answer. Didn't move. Didn't even swallow. After a minute, the woman laughed and said, "Maybe he's sleeping." They walked back to their car. I thought it was over. I was wrong. 5 minutes later, I turned on the TV just to fill the silence. Bad idea. The screen went bright, and the windows turned into mirrors. That's when I saw them. Reflections moving outside. Not leaving. Circling. Testing doors. Checking the side gate. One man pressed his face to the glass of the living room window. Eyes searching inside like he already owned the place. I didn't think anymore. I ran. The basement smelled like damp concrete and old laundry. I locked the door at the top of the stairs and went down shaking. My phone could barely hold charge. 1 bar. I dialed 911 with hands. That didn't feel like mine. "Someone's outside my house," I whispered. "Please, there are many of them." The operator told me to stay hidden, to stay quiet. That was when the first door upstairs broke. From the basement, I could hear everything. Boots on the kitchen tiles, drawers being ripped open, my mother's plate smashing. One man laughed like he was enjoying a party. The woman's voice floated down the stairs. "Find anything useful." The old man owes interest. Interest? That word sounded worse than any curse. They were not robbing us. They were collecting. Footsteps climbed to my bedroom. My closet opened. My bed flipped. I hugged the water heater and tried not to exist. Then someone came to the basement door. I saw the handle turn above me. Slow. Curious. The lock rattled. A man said, "Kid might be here." My heart beat. So loud I was sure he could hear it through the floor. The operator on the phone whispered, "Police are 3 minutes away. Do not make a sound." 3 minutes can be a lifetime. The handle turned again. Harder. Wood cracked. Just when the door began to give, the night changed. Siren light bled through the small basement window. Blue, red, blue. The house exploded with shouting. Boots ran. Curses flew. I heard one man say, "Leave him, leave it." Glass broke as they tried to escape through the back. More shouting. More footsteps. Then silence. A police officer found me, still holding the phone. I couldn't speak. Upstairs looked like a storm had learned to hate furniture. They arrested all 6 of them outside near the car. The woman kept staring at the house like she had forgotten something important. Later they told us the truth. My father had borrowed money from the wrong people when the hospital bills drowned us. He never told me. Dad had grown teeth. We moved after that, but I still wake at 1:03 a.m. I still hear knocks that aren't there. Sometimes when a car slows outside my apartment, I see reflections in the window and I'm 16 again alone, holding a phone, listening to my house being eaten. People say the men went to prison. Maybe they did, but fear didn't. Fear kept the key. If you owe the wrong people, they don't wait for daylight. They don't care about sickness, or funerals, or a boy hiding in a basement. They come like a second illness. Quiet at first, then all at once. And the knock at 1 a.m. never really stops. I didn't move outside the city because I wanted peace. I moved because I was losing. Rent climbing every year. 2 kids growing faster than my paycheck. A wife pretending not to worry when the bills came. Owning a house in the city felt like a joke told to poor people. So I built one where land was cheap. 30 miles past the last shopping center, where street lights stopped, and the woods started breathing right behind the fence. At first it felt like freedom. Then it started to feel like isolation. And isolation has doors. It was a Thursday in early fall. The kind of evening that turns dark too quickly. My wife was cooking. The kids were arguing over a tablet. I was fixing a loose hinge on the back door, telling myself I was finally a man who owned something. That's when the knock came. Not loud, not urgent, just confident. I remember thinking, asterisk nobody knocks out here. I walked to the front door and looked through the peephole. A man stood on my porch. Early 40s, clean jacket, soft face that almost looked friendly. Almost. I kept the chain on and cracked the door an inch. "Can I help you?" He smiled like we already knew each other. "Sorry to bother you, sir. I'm working a job inside the woods. Tree clearing. Lost track of daylight. My truck won't start. I just need a place to sit for the night. I'll be gone at first light." His voice was calm. Too calm. Behind him the road was empty. No truck. No tools. Just trees swallowing the last sun. I told him the only safe answer. I can't let strangers in. I've got family here. The smile didn't move. "I understand," he said. Thought I'd ask. He walked away slowly, hands in pockets, disappearing toward the tree line. I locked the door and felt foolish for still shaking. My wife asked who it was. "Just a guy looking for help," I said. But the house didn't feel normal anymore. Windows looked like eyes. The woods looked closer than before. I checked the locks twice. Then a third time. 45 minutes passed. The kids started homework. The TV murmured in the living room. That's when I saw him again. I was taking the trash out when movement froze me. Down the gravel driveway, Near the pines, the same man was walking toward the house, but this time he wasn't empty-handed. He carried a hunting gun, not slung over his shoulder like a worker. Held low, ready, my stomach dropped to the ground. I went inside without making a sound and locked everything. Get away from the windows, I told my wife. She saw my face and didn't ask questions. 5 minutes later, the knock returned. This one was not polite. 3 heavy blows that shook the frame. My kids went silent in a way children never do, unless they feel danger without understanding it. Through the peephole, I saw as I staring back. Too close, like he knew exactly where I was standing. "Sir," he called, voice changed. "I really need to come in now." My wife was already dialing 911. The operator's voice filled the room like thin courage. I had a shotgun in the closet. Never thought I'd touch it for anything except rust. My hands felt older than me loading it. The knocking came again, harder. The door jumped in its frame. Something in me stopped being polite forever. I stepped onto the porch, aimed upward, and fired into the air. The sound ripped the quiet world in half. Then nothing. Silence could be louder than gunfire. We stood inside, holding each other, listening for footsteps, for glass breaking, for the moment a normal life turns into a headline. The police said stay inside. They were coming from the nearest town, 20 minutes away. Out here, help travel slowly. Every shadow outside looked like him. When the cruisers finally arrived, the road turned. Blue and red like a carnival for fear. Dogs searched the woods. Officers questioned us separately. They found footprints circling the house. Fresh cigarette butts near my children's window. The man was gone, but not unknown. At the station, they showed me a photo. Same face from my porch. Same soft smile. Except in the photo, he was not a tired worker. He was a wanted man. Months earlier, he had murdered his grandfather in another state. Shot him inside a farmhouse that looked a lot like mine. He'd been drifting through rural counties, knocking on doors, looking for kind people. The officer said quietly, "You did everything right. Most folks would have opened that door." We didn't move. Couldn't afford to. But the house changed anyway. I installed lights bright enough to wake the dead. Cameras that blink like nervous eyes. A dog that growls at the wind. My kids learned too early how to drop to the floor when a knock sounds wrong. Sometimes, late at night, I imagine another family somewhere. Farther down the highway, hearing the same story I heard. A man in his 40s, polite, needing a place to stay. And I wonder if they'll be braver than me. Or less lucky. People think horror needs ghosts. It doesn't. Sometimes it only needs a mortgage you can barely pay. A house built too far from neighbors. And a stranger who understands how badly humans want to be kind. If you live where the city lights can't reach, remember this. Not every knock is a request. Some are tests. And the difference between home and a crime scene can be the width of a door. I used to think danger had a sound. Screaming, glass breaking, car alarms. I learned it can be softer than that. Sometimes danger sounds like a door opening the way your mother opens it every night. I was 16, home from boarding school, for the summer in the south of England. Our house sat on the edge of a small estate, brick terraces, neat gardens, the kind of street people describe as quiet on estate agent websites. My mom worked 2 jobs, a cafe shift at noon, care home nights until midnight. So my routine was simple. I waited for her every night. That evening was ordinary. I microwaved leftover lasagna, watched rubbish telly, texted school friends who were pretending to enjoy their holidays more than they really were. I kept checking the clock. 11:15 p.m., 11:24 p.m., 11:30 p.m. I always listen for her car, the tired engine, the scrape of the gate, her keys jingling like a small, familiar song. At 11:32 p.m., the front door opened. Gently, I smile without thinking. Home early for once, I whispered to myself. But something didn't fit. I hadn't heard the car. No footsteps on the gravel. No keys. Just the door. Then I heard movement in the hallway. Not one pair of feet. Several. And voices. Low, quick, excited whispers that did not belong to my mother. My stomach turned cold. Our staircase curved above the hall. From the top step, you could see the front. Door if you lean carefully. I moved like the house was made of glass. When I looked down, I saw them. Two men. One holding a gun like he'd practiced with it. The other with a long kitchen knife that caught. The light from the street lamp outside. They were arguing in hushed tones. Upstairs, one said. Quiet, yeah. We wait. They were waiting for someone. My mom. I didn't think. I ran back into my bedroom and locked the door. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my phone twice before dialing 999. The operator sounded calm in a way I will never forget. Police, what's your emergency? There are men in my house. I whispered. They have weapons. My mom isn't home. She told me to stay silent. Stay hidden. Keep the line open. That was when the men knocked on my bedroom door. The knock was polite at first, then a voice almost friendly. Mate, open up. We're not here for you. Another voice added, you cooperate, you won't get hurt. Promise. Like we were discussing homework. I pressed myself against the wardrobe and said nothing. They tried the handle. Once, twice, then the knife scraped against the wood and the politeness disappeared. The operator counted the minutes. Police were on the way. 9 minutes. 9 minutes can be longer than a lifetime. I heard them downstairs pulling drawers open, laughing, planning where to stand when Mom arrived. One said, she gets in about midnight. Yeah? They knew. That was the worst part. My bedroom door wasn't strong. I realized that while watching the lock shake, like a tooth about to fall out. I opened the window and tasted cold night air. We were only one floor up, but the drop looked like the edge of the world. The door split with a crack that sounded like a bone. I climbed onto the sill, just as it would burst inward. I'd grown up there. I knew every step that didn't creak, every corner that hid you from view. Instead of jumping, I slipped along the small roof ledge to my mom's room window, always left unlatched for summer heat. I fell inside as their boots hit my carpet. One shouted, where'd he go? I was already moving again, through Mom's room, down the back stairs, into the kitchen. The police were still on the phone, voices like thin ropes holding me together. I unlocked the back door and stepped into the garden, just as blue lights painted the fences. At the same moment, Mom's car turned into the street. She almost walked straight into them. The men bolted, over the fence, through the allotments, into the small forest behind our estate. Officers chased, dogs followed. Torches cut the trees into slices. But the night swallowed them. They were never caught. The police believed it wasn't random. Someone had watched our house, learned Mom's schedule, knew a teenage boy would be alone, but no fingerprints, no CCTV clear enough. Just two shadows who understood our lives better than we did. We still don't know what they wanted. Robbery? Kidnapping? Something worse they planned to do when Mom walked through that door? Questions are heavier than answers. I went back to boarding school in September. People said I was lucky. Maybe. But luck doesn't stop the dreams. I still hear the door opening at 11:32. I still wait before midnight waiting. For a car I already know is there. Our house has new locks, new cameras, new lights bright as prisons. But homes remember, and so do I. If you ever wait for someone you love to come home at night, listen carefully to the difference between their footsteps and the footsteps that choose your house by mistake. And if a door opens without the sound of a car, do not assume it is family. Sometimes it is the future arriving early, with a gun, a knife, and a timetable that knows your mother better than you do. I was 12 when my life stopped belonging to me. Before that year, everything was ordinary in the way children think ordinary is permanent. Dad worked at a delivery depot outside Leeds. Mom cleaned rooms at a small hotel near the station. My little sister, Ellie, was 10, loud, stubborn, always stealing my chips and laughing with mouth full of gaps where her teeth used to be. Then my father met the old man. Dad never explained exactly what the argument was about. He only said the man had been watching him at work, standing too close, asking questions that had nothing to do with parcels or schedules. One evening the man blocked Dad near the loading bay. Voices were raised. Hands were thrown. By the end of it, the stranger lay on the wet concrete holding his jaw, and my father came home with torn knuckles and a face like he'd seen a ghost. He said he'd deal with me. Dad told Mom that night, while I pretended to be asleep on the sofa. Not fight me. Deal with me. A week later, someone slashed our car tires. Then bricks through the front window. Then a dead fox left on our doorstep with its stomach cut open like a purse. The police called it coincidence. Dad called it a promise being kept. Mom decided we had to disappear. We didn't have the money for anywhere decent. The only place we could afford was a narrow, gray house miles from the city, squeezed between fields that smelled of wet soil and rotting leaves. No neighbors close enough to borrow sugar from. No buses after 6 in the evening. Just for a while, Mom kept saying, until things cooled down. The house never felt new to us. It felt like we were visiting something that didn't want guests. The mirrors were the worst. Every room had one, old and cloudy, like eyes that had cataracts. Ellie joked that the house was vain. I joked that it was watching us. Neither of us were laughing by the end. One Friday, my parents said they had to meet someone about Dad's job. They promised to be back before midnight. I remember Mom brushing Ellie's hair and telling me to be brave, to keep the doors locked, to ring if anything felt wrong. They left at 7. Midnight came and went. At 1:03 a.m. something pulled me out of sleep. Not a sound, more like a finger inside my chest turning a key. The house was silent in the thick way that silence becomes when it's hiding something. Ellie was still breathing softly in the next bed. I went checked the front door and saw Mom's coat still hanging there, empty and patient. Their car was in the drive. That was when I heard the crying. Not Ellie's, not human exactly. It came from the spare room at the end of the corridor. The room we never used because the wallpaper peeled like old skin. I told myself it was pipes, wind, a dream still stuck in my ears. But the cry came again, thin and lonely, like a child asking a question no one wanted to answer. I walked down the hallway barefoot. The carpet felt damp though it wasn't. The spare room door was already open a crack. Inside, the curtains were drawn but something was shining. A small square of light breathing in the dark. The mirror. We hadn't put one in there. I was sure of it. It stood against the far wall. Tall as a man, glass, so clean it looked like a hole cut out of the world. The crying was coming from inside it. I remember whispering, hello? The reflection showed the room, the bed, the wardrobe, and me, but also something that wasn't there behind me. A shape crouched in the corner, like a wet coat, pretending to be a person. Then it moved, not in the room, In the mirror, it came forward the way smoke comes when you open a door in winter, slow and confident. The glass rippled as if it were water, and the thing stepped through. I don't have words for its face, only that it looked hungry and old, like the stranger my father had fought. It touched my chest, and everything inside me went quiet. Mom and Dad came home at dawn, shaking and pale. They said they'd seen the old man on the road, standing in front of the car, so it had to stop. They swore he spoke without opening his mouth. He went to a spiritualist. Mom kept repeating, he cursed our children. I didn't tell them what happened in the spare room. I couldn't. The words wouldn't line up inside me anymore. From that morning, I wasn't the same. At school, I would lose hours and find myself in places I didn't remember walking to. Teachers said I stared at walls and smiled at nothing. Ellie told Mom I talked in my sleep, using a voice that sounded like gravel in a tin. Animals avoided me. Dogs cried when I passed. And sometimes in any mirror, I saw the old man standing where my reflection should be. My parents dragged me to churches where people pressed oily hands on my head and shouted at the sky. We visited spiritualists in terrace houses that smelled of incense and damp coats. One woman tied red string around my wrist and told Mom something had taken residence. Nothing worked. As I grew older, the blackouts became worse. I would wake with mud on my shoes, with scratches on my arms, with coins in my pockets that belonged to no one. Once I found Ellie hiding in the bathroom, saying I had tried to lock her in the mirror. I don't remember doing it, but I believe her. I'm speaking to you from that same house. My parents are gone, Mom from illness, Dad from a heart that finally gave up running. Ellie moved away and only phones on birthdays. She says she loves me, but her voice always sounds careful, like she's talking to a dog through a fence. The spare room is still here. So is the mirror. Some nights I wake at 1:03 a.m. exactly, and I hear the crying again. I know it isn't calling me this time. It's calling the next child. I've tried to smash the glass. The hammer bounced as if the mirror were made of thick air. I covered it with sheets. They slid off by morning. I moved it to the shed and found it back in a room before sunset. Whoever stepped into me that night has been wearing my life like borrowed clothes. I can feel it getting tired of pretending. If you are listening to this on Fractured Mind TV, believe me when I say, some curses don't want to kill you. They want to live in you. And one day they plan to answer the door.